We do this for the planet and for each other. We do this for justice and for peace and for democracy. And as we are about to hear, we do this for the safety of our communities.
Please welcome Genesee County, Michigan Sheriff Chris Swanson.
My job is to protect people, all people. In 2020, righteous anger spilled over into the streets of Flint, Michigan. One bad decision from either side, and there would have been bloodshed. But that didn't happen. We laid down our riot gear, and we embraced the community, and instead of hate, we chose hope. On January 6th, the opposite occurred. That day was paved with division, deceit, and denigration. Police officers were attacked that day. It could have been stopped. We need a leader who will embody what's affixed to all three sides of my sheriff patrol cars: protect, serve, and unify. Kamala Harris is that leader. As a prosecutor, Kamala Harris protected us by putting violent criminals and sex offenders behind bars. If I was in a courtroom, she's exactly the tough prosecutor that I'd want to see. As vice president, she served America by keeping us safer. And I can testify firsthand, where I come from, crime is down and police funding is up. As president, Kamala Harris will unify our country. She will bring us together because our country needs a leader who will go toe-to-toe with drug cartels and bullies. One who has already taken the oath, raised her right hand to advocate for the people. I can tell you in 2020, we were able to turn a protest into a peaceful movement by walking together. One city, one community, and one country. America, let's walk. Let's walk. Let's walk together and let's elect Kamala Harris and turn hate into hope yet again. Thank you.
We were contemplating adopting him, and then, out of nowhere, I got pregnant. Jordan was so much fun as a child.
When all of a sudden...
Oh my God, somebody's shooting!
3 of those rounds he aimed at Jordan. Jordan didn't deserve to die that way.
Reports of an active shooter at a high school.
These students have now lived through so many of these shootings since they were born almost.
We were praying and crying. I don't know how we're alive.
An active shooter at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Multiple children have been killed.
Most of the body so mutilated that only DNA test or green Converse could identify.
Trump did nothing on guns and was proud of it.
There was great pressure on me. We did nothing.
After a mass shooting in Iowa, Trump said,
I have to get over it.
"You never get over it." Kamala Harris and Joe Biden refused to get over it. As district attorney, she got illegal guns off the street. As attorney general, she took on transnational crime rings and stopped gun trafficking. As vice president, she helped pass the most sweeping gun violence legislation in 3 decades, keeping guns out of the hands of criminals, expanding background checks, closing loopholes,
will finally pass red flag laws, universal background checks, and an assault weapons ban.
Kamala understands the fight we're in.
The power is with the people.
And gives people like me, survivors like me, hope. When I worked for Everytown
Please
for gun
welcome
safety,
Georgia Representative Lucy McBath.
When I worked for Everytown for gun safety and Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, I saw firsthand the power of telling our stories. You've just heard mine, but there are many more to tell.
On December 14th, 2012, I walked into Sandy Hook School. I stopped at the office, chatted with my principal, then started my day with my second graders. Suddenly, a loud crash, like metal folding chairs falling. 154 gunshots blaring. Hiding in the coats, trying to sing with my students, trying to read to them, trying to drown out the sounds. Terror, crying, running. I carry that horrific day with me. 20 beautiful first grade children and 6 of my beautiful colleagues were killed. They should still be here.
It's 10:30 a.m. at Robb Elementary in Uvalde. The school is recognizing my 10-year-old daughter, Lexi, for receiving all A's. She receives a Good Citizen Award, and we pose for photos. She wears a St. Mary's sweatshirt and a smile that lights up the room. 30 minutes later, a gunman murders her, 18 classmates, and 2 teachers. We are taken to a private room where police tell us she isn't coming home. Uvalde is national news. Parents everywhere reach for their children. I reach out for the daughter I will never hold again.
My niece, Sandy Patrice, was 22. She drove to Myrtle Beach for sun and fun and motorcycle parades. Hours later, my phone rang. Shooting on the beach. No one can find Sandy. I stayed calm. You see, my mother, Patricia Ann, had been shot and killed by an abusive partner. I was calm then too. I got to handling business. I called relatives, the police, hospitals, and I kept calling, voice steady, heartbeat pulsing. Then I was connected to the coroner. 10 years of waiting, and Sandy's murder is still unsolved. I'll keep calling, and I'll keep fighting.
I was in high school when my classmate got shot. It changed my story. Instead about worrying about taking a test, I started worrying about living to take another test. They say schools are for learning, and I did learn a lot that day. I learned how to run.
Close. But in Arizona and nationwide, this election will be. We'll win in the same way we launch rockets into space and land fighter jets on an aircraft carrier.
And capped the cost of insulin. And led the fight to restore reproductive rights after Roe v. Wade was overturned.
We have worked too hard and fought too long to see our daughters grow up in a world with fewer rights than our mothers.
Because she's never been afraid to stand up to powerful interests.
Sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open, sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language.
Now, she's running for president, still fighting for families like the one she grew up with.
Our campaign is about saying we trust the people. We're saying we just want fairness. We want dignity for all people. And we are a work in progress. We haven't yet quite reached all of those ideals, but we will die trying because we love our country. We believe in our country. We're not falling for these folks who are trying to divide us, trying to pull us apart. We know what we stand for, and we stand for the people, and we stand for the dignity of work, and we stand for freedom. We stand for justice. We stand for equality. And so we will fight for all of it.
That's
Thank you so very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Okay, let's get to business. Let's get to business. All right. So let me start by thanking my most incredible husband, Doug, for being an incredible partner to me, an incredible father to Cole and Ella, and happy anniversary, Dougie. I love you so very much. To our President, Joe Biden. When I think about the path that we have traveled together, Joe, I am filled with gratitude. Your record is extraordinary, as history will show, and your character is inspiring, And Doug and I love you and Jill and are forever thankful to you both. And to Coach Tim Walz, you are going to be an incredible vice president. And to the delegates and everyone who has put your faith in our campaign, your support is humbling. So, America, the path that led me here in recent weeks was no doubt unexpected. But I'm no stranger to unlikely journeys. So, my mother, our mother, Shamala Harris, had one of her own, and I miss her every day, and especially right now. And I know she's looking down smiling. I know that. So my mother was 19 when she crossed the world alone, traveling from India to California with an unshakable dream to be the scientist who would cure breast cancer. When she finished school, she was supposed to return home to a traditional arranged marriage. But as fate would have it, she met my father, Donald Harris, a student from Jamaica. They fell in love and got married, and that act of self-determination made my sister Maya and me. Growing up, we moved a lot. I will always remember that big Mayflower truck packed with all our belongings, ready to go to Illinois, to Wisconsin, and wherever our parents' jobs took us. My early memories of our parents together are very joyful ones. A home filled with laughter and music, Aretha, Coltrane, and Miles. At the park, my mother would say, "Stay close." But my father would say, as he smiled, "Run, Kamala, run. Don't be afraid. Don't let anything stop you." From my earliest years, he taught me to be fearless. But the harmony between my parents did not last. When I was in elementary school, they split up. And it was mostly my mother who raised us. Before she could finally afford to buy a home, she rented a small apartment in the East Bay. In the Bay, you either live in the hills or the flatlands. We lived in the flats. A beautiful working class neighborhood of firefighters, nurses, and construction workers, all who tended their lawns with pride. My mother, she worked long hours, and like many working parents, she leaned on a trusted circle to help raise us. Mrs. Shelton, who ran the daycare below us and became a second mother. Uncle Sherman, Aunt Mary, Uncle Freddie, Auntie Chris. None of them family by blood, and all of them family by love. Family who taught us how to make gumbo, how to play chess, and sometimes even let us win. Family who loved us, believed in us, and told us we could be anything and do anything. They instilled in us the values they personified: community, faith, and the importance of treating others as you would want to be treated, with kindness, respect, and compassion. My mother was a brilliant, 5-foot-tall, brown woman with an accent. And as the eldest child, as the eldest child, I saw how the world would sometimes treat her. But my mother never lost her cool. She was tough, courageous, a trailblazer in the fight for women's health, and she taught Maya and me a lesson that Michelle mentioned the other night. She taught us to never complain about injustice, but do something about it. Do something about it. That was my mother. And she taught us, and she also taught us, and never do anything half-assed. And that is a direct quote. A direct quote. I grew up immersed in the ideals of the civil rights movement. My parents had met at a civil rights gathering, and they made sure that we learned about civil rights leaders, including the lawyers like Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley, those who battled in the courtroom to make real the promise of America. So at a young age, I decided I wanted to do that work. I wanted to be a lawyer. And when it came time to choose the type of law I would pursue, I reflected on a pivotal moment in my life. You see, when I was in high school, I started to notice something about my best friend, Wanda. She was sad at school, and there were times she didn't want to go home. So one day I asked if everything was all right, and she confided in me that she was being sexually abused by her stepfather. And I immediately told her she had to come stay with us, and she did. This is one of the reasons I became a prosecutor, to protect people like Wanda, because I believe everyone has a right to safety, to dignity, and to justice. As a prosecutor, when I had a case, I charged it not in the name of the victim, but in the name of the people. For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. And I would often explain this to console survivors of crime, to remind them no one should be made to fight alone. We are all in this together. And every day in the courtroom, I stood proudly before a judge and I said 5 words: Kamala Harris for the people. And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. And with this election, nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power. I will be a president who unites us around our highest aspirations, a president who leads and listens, who is realistic, practical, and has common sense, and always fights for the American people. From the courthouse to the White House, that has been my life's work. As a young courtroom prosecutor in Oakland, California, I stood up for women and children against predators who abuse them. As Attorney General of California, I took on the big banks, delivered $20 billion for middle-class families who faced foreclosure, and helped pass a homeowner Bill of Rights, one of the first of its kind in the nation. I stood up for veterans and students being scammed by big for-profit colleges, for workers who are being cheated out of their wages, the wages they were due, for seniors facing elder abuse. I fought against the cartels who traffic in guns and drugs and human beings, who threaten the security of our border and the safety of our communities. And I will tell you, these fights were not easy. And neither were the elections that put me in those offices. We were underestimated at practically every turn. But we never gave up, because the future is always worth fighting for. And that's the fight we are in right now, a fight for America's future. Fellow Americans, this election is not only the most important of our lives, it is one of the most important in the life of our nation. In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol, where they assaulted law enforcement officers. When politicians in his own party begged him to call off the mob and send help, he did the opposite. He fanned the flames. And now, for an entirely different set of crimes. He was found guilty of fraud by a jury of everyday Americans and separately found liable for committing sexual abuse. And consider what he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy. His explicit intent to deploy our active duty military against our own citizens. Consider the power he will have, especially after the United States Supreme Court just ruled that he would be immune from criminal prosecution. Just imagine Donald Trump with no guardrails, and how he would use the immense powers of the presidency of the United States, not to improve your life, not to strengthen our national security, but to serve the only client he has ever had, himself. And we know what a second Trump term would look like. It's all laid out in Project 2025, written by his closest advisors, and its sum total is to pull our country back to the past. But America, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back to when Donald Trump tried to cut Social Security and Medicare. We are not going back to when he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions. We are not going to let him eliminate the Department of Education that funds our public schools. We are not going to let him end programs like Head Start that provide preschool and child care for our children. America, we are not going back. And we are charting a new way forward. To a future with a strong and growing middle class, because we know a strong middle class has always been critical to America's success. And building that middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency. And I'll tell you, this is personal for me. The middle class is where I come from. My mother kept a strict budget. We lived within our means, yet we wanted for little. And she expected us to make the most of the opportunities that were available to us and to be grateful for them. Because, as she taught us, opportunity is not available to everyone. That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy, where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed. Whether you live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage and protect Social Security and Medicare. Now compare that to Donald Trump, because I think everyone here knows he doesn't actually fight for the middle class. He doesn't actually fight for the middle class. Instead, he fights for himself and his billionaire friends. And he will give them another round of tax breaks that will add up to $5 trillion to the national debt. And all the while, he intends to enact what in effect is a national sales tax, call it a Trump tax, that would raise prices on middle-class families by almost $4,000 a year. Well, instead of a Trump tax hike, we will pass a middle-class tax cut that will benefit more than 100 million Americans. Friends, I believe America cannot truly be prosperous unless Americans are fully able to make their own decisions about their own lives, especially on matters of heart and home. But tonight, in America, too many women are not able to make those decisions. And let's be clear about how we got here. Donald